Hi, I'm Doug Horchak, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. Today we're going to read from a prayer that Christ expressed to the Father on the day before he was crucified. As a matter of fact, it is the most detailed prayer of Jesus recorded in the Bible. Let's begin by reading what Christ said to the Father in John 17, verse 11. "Now I am no longer in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to you. Holy Father, keep through your name those whom you have given me, that they may be one as we are." Wow, there's a lot packed into these words, but let's take a look at the request Christ made to the Father. By reading through the entire chapter, one quickly realizes that John chapter 17 is the recorded text of a prayer of Jesus to his Father on the night that he was betrayed, just prior to his crucifixion and death the following day. But what did he pray about? Well, there is much that Christ said to his Father, but suffice it to say that Jesus prayed about those he was going to actually leave behind, his disciples, his followers. In fact, history shows he was praying for those that represented the very earliest beginnings of the New Testament church. With Jesus soon departing, he told these men that as a result they would soon receive the help of God's Holy Spirit. Jesus was asking God for his help, his protection, and his intervention in caring for those early members of the church as they ventured into their Christian lives, individuals that would make up the very first century church of God. When you read through this entire chapter, you can better grasp the full picture of what Christ was asking. But here in verse 11, there are three things Christ focuses on: that these members would remain in the world. Also, as such, Jesus asked the Father to keep through your name, that they may, as he says, be one as the Father and Son are. Clearly, Jesus was concerned about the health and very existence of the church as he looked into the future. And in expressing this to the Father, Christ brought up the need to protect the church from the evil one, referring to Satan the devil. He knew Satan would put great time and effort into deceiving, confusing, and even making an effort to destroy the true church of God. So in this statement in John 17 and verse 11, Jesus was asking the Father to help these new converts, these disciples, to help them retain the knowledge that they had been taught, knowledge of the true gospel message and their understanding of the true God and his incredible plan. In addition, we see that Christ was also asking the Father to keep these called out ones in his very name, being identified as the Church of God. In fact, both the book of Acts and several places in the Apostle Paul's letters refer to those that God called by that very name, the Church of God. Now fast forward over 1900 years to today, in the 21st century, and we have quite a different picture. Depending on how you count the myriad of Christian groups, there are anywhere from hundreds of different denominations within what is called Christianity to thousands of varying Christian groups and churches. And for the most part, the fundamental reason for so many of these groups being different, quite honestly, is they just don't agree. They don't agree on doctrine and their fundamental teachings. They don't agree on church leadership. They don't agree on the basics of the subject of salvation. And they certainly don't even agree on the content of the actual gospel message of Jesus Christ. We know from Jesus' comments to his disciples in Matthew chapter 24 that, quote, "Many would come in my name, saying I am Christ, and would deceive many," end quote. That night that Jesus prayed to the Father, he knew that confusion in the name of Christianity would increase over time, and asked the Father to help keep and protect and preserve the teachings, the functions of, and the unity of the true Church of God, both then and in the future. Praying not just for those 12 disciples, not just for the 120 that were together on the day of Pentecost just weeks later, but for the thousands of true believers over the next 2 millennia. As Jesus said to the Father in this very prayer in John 17, "I do not pray for these alone, but also for those who will believe in me through their word." Christ was praying for the viability and doctrinal integrity of the Church of God throughout history, a history of God's people that would unfold over the centuries, even to this very day.
Verse by Verse is a companion podcast to the Daily Bible Verse blog, which you can find on the Life, Hope, and Truth Learning Center. Check out the show notes for more.